Welcome to part 4 of the Advanced Revit course. In this lesson, we're going to be creating rooms and adding a custom room tag to those rooms. This will also introduce you to using parameters and labels. If you'd like to get access to all of the course files, materials, and resources, as well as 20 hours of ad-free content, you can feel free to check out the full course on my website. I'll see you there. The next thing we're going to do is start adding some room names and look at how we can get the areas of each room from the same tag. So I'm going to just open up this viewport. I'm going to go to the architecture tab and then click on room. And you can also see that RM is going to do the same thing. Now, as we hover over the floor plan, you're not going to see it locking on to anything until there's an area with a closed room. And you can see that this is fully enclosed with walls. And so it's going to make this a room. If we click to place that room, you can see it's going to highlight that. So that's gone ahead and recognized this bounding area as an actual room, but it hasn't placed a tag for us to show that it is in fact a room. So then in the architecture tab, if we come over to the tag room or RT button, this is how we can then tag a specific room. And you can see this is a default room tag that has been loaded in as a family from the Revit library, which is also available to you in the course content if you've downloaded this course or accessing it on the website. We're going to place this room tag, which we're also going to create a custom one of, but let's just place it for now. And you can see that we now show this room as being room number 2, and it has a square meterage of 25 meters squared. If we want to edit any of these, I can just select that tag and then edit the parameters. So we might call this one games room, because that's what it is. We can make this room number 1, and you're going to see that we've already got a room that is room number 1, but that's okay. And the square meterage, we're not going to be able to edit because that is a calculated value. In fact, if we go ahead and click on room and click on tag on placement, you're going to see that it automatically places that tag for us when we place a room. And you can see that this room is still not enclosed. Now, the reason for this is because these walls are not room bounding. So what I mean by that is if I select it, you can see in the properties panel, the room bounding option. Now this one is room bounding, but one of them is not going to be room bounding. So we just have to find which wall it is that which is kind of screwing us over. Now, as I've just checked, they are in fact room bounding. All of them are room bounding. So then it makes me think, why is this still not showing up as a room? And it's saying it's not enclosed, but all of the walls are room bounding, or are they? And so if I check this bathroom wall here, I can actually see that the base constraint is going to the ground bathroom and not the ground floor like the other walls. So what that's telling me is that there's going to be a gap between the slab in that bathroom and then where that wall starts, because it starts 400 millimeters above the ground floor. So what I need to do is bring this down to the ground floor. And that's going to also include these two walls here. I'm going to bring them down, bring the base offset down to the ground floor. And now that's going to properly enclose that room. And we can double check that by now pressing RM. And there we go. Now we've got a fully enclosed room, which we can label and tag as a room. And I'm going to call this the bedroom or the master bedroom. We can call that room 2 for now. We can change all that later, and it gives us the square meterage, which is very cool. We can then change this wall to go down to the ground floor as well, and we can now create this bathroom as a room, as well as this little wardrobe or walk-in robe space as well. So we can call this the WIR, as in walk-in robe, and we can call this one the ensuite. We're going to see if we can then also enclose that entrance, which is this space here. And because there are stairs going up, this is where we'll need to use room separator lines to separate that and say that this is in fact a closed room, which it is not because there's stairs there, but we want to call it a room. And so now we can label that as a room. And if we don't want these room separator lines to show up on our floor plans, because it does look kind of weird being blue dotted lines, we can go to the visibility and graphics settings by pressing VV or VG. I'm going to press VV to bring that up. And then if I scroll down under model categories to lines and I bring this out, you're going to see there's going to be room separation lines here. and we can turn the visibility for these to off. We just uncheck that, click apply, and now they no longer show up as planned. All right, so that's great. We've got all of the rooms we need. We can call this entrance. But now what we want to do is get rid of this tag and create something custom. This is going to introduce you to creating custom tags or custom markers, which is going to be this next part of annotation. So let's go ahead and click on that family, which is the room tag, and go edit family. Here, we are now inside of this tag. This is within the family editor, except this is going to be a line-based or annotation-based family. It's not a model family, so you're not going to have your normal masses that you can create. And so if we select this first piece of text, you're going to notice that it's not actually text, it's a label. And this is probably one of the most important things to note when using annotation inside of Revit. Normal text can kind of be labeled as dummy text. It's not intelligent text, whereas things like tags are intelligent because you're essentially tagging an element within your project, which is then being able to be referenced throughout the entire project. Whereas if you use a text note over the room and you just say living room, that's only going to show up on that view. And if that room changes to, say, instead be called the games room, then you'll have to change that on every single view where you've tagged that room. Whereas by tagging the room like we've just done, we're then able to intelligently change it in one spot and it's going to change across the entire project, which is what we want. What do we want to do with this tag? Essentially, we want to show the room name, which we've already got there. We don't really need a room number. Being a residential project, you're not going to have, say, office 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just going to be pretty standard names of rooms. You're going to have bedroom 1, 2, and 3 maybe, but you don't need a room number for all of those because there's not that many rooms. And so already we know that we can probably just delete that label because we're not going to need it. Now this here is the label for the dimensions of the room. This we do want, but we don't want it to show the meters squared. Whereas that is useful. In the practice I work in, we like to show it as a dimensioning kind of thing. So you're showing the width and the length of the room rather than a square meterage. And you might be wondering, why does it look so weird? Why does it look like there's two different tags on top of each other? And that's because there is. You've got the volume tag and then the meter squared tag. And the reason why these both don't show up inside of your view, and what I'm going to do is just switch back to that ground floor plan. Why these both don't show up is because there are different labels or different tags within that one tag family. You can see that it's just got a room tag where it's just got the room number and then the room name. And then you've got room tag with area, which adds on that extra parameter. And then you've got room tag with volume, which is going to make that other tag not visible. That meter squared tag, that's going to go invisible. And then it's going to bring up this volume tag, which is going to grab the height of the room as well as the length and the width, and then create a volume parameter. And so that's all within this one family, which is pretty intelligent. So for us, we don't really need to know the volume of the room, but what I do want is that width times length kind of dimensioning of it. But we also want this meter squared tag as well because it can be useful, but we only want it to be turned on per instance or at times that we want. So I'm going to undo that and put the volume tag back where it was. And we can actually select that volume tag. I'm just going to press tab until I can select it and you can see it in blue there. And now I'm going to edit this label. So you can see it's got a volume parameter, which we don't actually need. So while editing this label, I can click on the remove parameter from label. You can see that there is a whole list of different parameters that you can tap into for this room tag. Area is what's being used if I add this parameter to the label. For the other tag, you can see it's got 150 square feet or SF, whatever that may be. And so we've already got that tag there. Just going to undo that. If we select this other tag with the meter squared, you can see that's based off of area and that's using that there. But this volume tag, we don't want to show area. We want to show the length times width. And that might be difficult because there is no length times width parameter. And that's where we're going to have to create a calculated parameter field. So if I click on that FX button there, which is kind of the formula button. So we're going to have to create two different calculated values, one being the length because it's not in the available parameters to us. We're going to have to create a length calculated value and a width calculated value, and then we can grab the area from that. So I'm going to call this first one length. Now for the formula, I'm going to add a pretty complex formula. I'm just going to paste this, and this is using some basic coding language, I guess, where it's saying if the area equals the perimeter divided by 4, blah, 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 it's calculating the length. So if I click OK, I'm going to create another calculated parameter and call this one width. I'm going to change the type to length as well, and then add the formula area divided by length. Now I can click OK, and I'll show you what this does now. This isn't completely finished, but if we apply that and click OK, you can see that it's going to show us the length and the width. Now if I load this into the project so we can just get an idea of what this looks like, I'm going to overwrite the existing version and the parameter values. Now the first thing you're going to see is that it's just showing the length and width, and it's got this weird box around it, and we can play with that. But the second thing you'll notice is that if we dimension, I just press DI there, from one side of the wall to the other, it's not correlating with the length or width of this. And that's because this is only really going to work for a box. If we look at the shape of the room, it's difficult to get a length or a width of this shape because it's not a rectangle. So the calculation used doesn't necessarily work for a space that isn't rectangular. Whereas in a space such as this entrance that is rectangular, you can see that 2480 is the length and 2550 is the width, or vice versa. And that's actually showing up how it should do. So it does have its limitations. If we wanted to, we could use room separation lines to get the length and width of this correct. For example, I could go to Architecture tab, Room Separator, and create a room separator line from here. And this is now going to show that width correctly, 6287, because it's treating this as a rectangle. You can see that room is a rectangle, but then it's going to show the width only to this wall here. And so there just isn't really a way around that, considering that that's just how this room is shaped. It's not a length times width rectangle. It's a number of different rectangles joined together. And so then in that case, we might not want to show that length times width. I'm just going to undo the room there. We might want to show that as a square meterage. And so we can come back to the room tag family and we can make that the room tag with area. And now you're going to show that as 27 meters squared, which is showing the area of this entire space. Now we're going to go back into this family and we're going to fix up a few things here. The whole reason of that exercise was to show you how these calculated parameters work, and it's an introduction to using parameters and labels. So let's go ahead and edit this length width parameter, and I'm going to edit the label, and what we want to do is to show it as length times width, rather than just two numbers showing length and width next to each other. So in the prefix for width, I'm going to type X for times, and then a space. So it's going to show you length, space, times, space, width. If we click OK, you can see it there. Now, if we go back into the model, you can see that this is still showing as room tag with volume, when in fact it's not volume, it's, I guess, dimensions. So I'm going to change that. Now, the way this works is under visibility, they've made it a parameter to make sure that you can turn it on or off dependent on what you want to use it for. And so here you can see that it's show volume. Now we're going to want this to say show dimensions instead of show volume, but I want to show you how this works first. If we go back to the ground floor model again, sorry, I'm jumping back and forth between them, and we click on this room tag and we click edit type, you're going to see there's a number of different parameters that can be changed and turned on or off. For the room tag, that is just the room tag with volume. In this case, it's showing the room name and the dimensions. This family type has show volume as ticked, which means it is visible because this is the visibility parameter. It's got show room number as ticked, and so we deleted that, so it's not going to show anyways. So in fact, we could probably just untick that. That parameter should be deleted anyways. And then the show area parameter is unticked, which means it's not visible, which is why, because even though this is over the top of the area parameter in the actual family, that's why you can't see the area. Whereas if we make this room tag with area, then you can see it's not showing the volume, but it is showing the area. So by using this visibility parameter, we are able to show multiple things inside this one family, but turn them on or off. So if we come back to this family, if we come up to the properties panel under the modify tab, and you click on family types, that's where we're going to see the show area, show room number parameters. Now we don't need to delete the show volume parameter, we just need to show it as show dimension. So if we change this by going to edit parameter after selecting it, we change the name to show dimensions, we click OK, that's going to change the name of that. Now under show room number, we don't need this. So what we can actually do is delete this parameter with the delete parameter button down here. And you're going to say that it's currently being used by 4 dimensions and or arrays, and that's fine because we deleted that. So that's no longer a problem. Now if we click OK, it's going to be disappeared. And if we come over to the associate family parameter, it's going to show dimensions and show area. I'm going to just load this into the project to show you what it looks like now. Overwrite the existing version. We can also save the project while we're here. And you're going to see that it's still got that box around it, and we can get rid of that in a moment. But it's showing now that it's got the room tag with volume here, which is something we can also rename by going to edit type, rename room tag with dimensions. So now we've got a family which has room tag, shows none of the dimensions. It's just going to be the name of the room. So it might just say entrance. Then we've got one with the area, which is going to show just the area and not the dimensions. And then we've got the one with the dimensions, which is going to inverse that. Now you might be wondering where this box is coming from that's around the dimensions. If I go back to the room tag, we wanted to get rid of this box, but it doesn't look like there actually is a box anywhere. My first thought would be that it's got a border around the length times width tag. So if we go to edit type and we come down to show border, you can see it in fact doesn't have that ticked, which is strange. So if we open up the visibility and graphics settings for this family by pressing VG or VV, I'll press VV. We come down to the annotation category. I'm going to tick the show annotation categories in this view. And now I'm going to apply that, and there you can see that box. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete that box. I don't think we need that. And now if we load this into the project, you'll see that that box is no longer there. But in fact, we might actually want a border around this text. So to do that, I'm going to do it the proper way. And I'm going to select that tag label, edit the type, and click show border. If I click OK, you're now going to see that it's changed it for everything. So I'm in fact going to undo that, go edit type, duplicate this as a 3mm with border, and then add the border now, and it will only add it to that box. I'm going to just add it to the other one as well. So I can change this to 3mm with border, load this into the project, and we'll see if that worked. So now it's going to add a border that is parametric rather than just a line box. All right, so that's essentially going to do it for the room tags, but I want to show you one other thing, which is how to actually create, say, another thing underneath this, which can turn on or off, because I've shown you that it is possible, but I want to show you how to do that. So I'm going to just create another label. I'm going to go to the create tab and click on label. I'm just going to use the 3mm label again and click to place the label. Now let's say we wanted the room number back. So I might click on number and bring this parameter into the label parameters. We can make the sample value just 1 for room 1, and I'm just going to click OK. So here we've got our room parameter, and you can see that it's always ticked on as visible. However, if we go ahead and click associate family parameter, we can create a new parameter that says, and if we make this a type parameter, we can call this show room number and click OK. Now you can see we've created another parameter which is going to be used inside of room tag family. So I'm going to overwrite this again, and now the room number is going to show up again on every single room, but we might not want that to show. So what we can do is edit the type, and for the room tag with dimensions, we can go ahead and untick that. And you're going to wonder why this is under other instead of graphics, and we can come back to that in a second. But by unticking that, now it's not going to be visible, which is good. If we go back to this room tag family and we click on family types again, you can see that we can edit this parameter, the show room parameter, by clicking the edit parameter button. Now to change this to graphics, we can just change the group which the parameter is under to graphics. I'm just going to type GRA to bring that up. and I'll click OK, and you can see that's now under graphic. Now, something that you might have noticed in the title block is that you can turn the north point on and off, and that's using this visibility parameter, but it's instance based. So you're not having to go into edit type and then turn it off from the type parameters. What you're doing is turning it off instance based, so you can turn it off in this sheet and not another sheet. So for example, you could do the same thing for the room numbers and assign an instance based parameter to the room numbers and then turn it off on this one, but not this. Now the issue is this instance-based parameter doesn't work for tags. So that's the only downfall with instance-based parameters. It can work for things like this title block where you've got a north point or something like that, which you can turn on and off, but it won't work for a room tag or an elevation marker or something like that. So now you know how to create custom room tags, how to use room tags. There's one last thing I'd like to show you with room tags, which is creating kind of like an area plan for your drawing. Under the Annotate tab for the ground floor plan, I'm going to click on this color fill legend. Now you can see that this places a legend in a view to indicate the meanings of color fills for rooms or areas. So if I create and click this, say in the top right corner where the legends are, what I can do is change the space type to rooms and the color scheme to number. I'm going to click OK. You're going to see it's going to be calculating that. So now for each of the rooms, they're going to have a different color assigned depending on what their room number is. And this is based off this being room 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But what I want this to do is to show up the room names rather than the numbers. So I'm going to go Edit Scheme. I'm going to change this to be, let's say, name instead of number for the colors. We'll click OK. If we apply that, you're now going to see that each room has its own color applied to it, and it's got this color schedule at the top here as well. So that's really handy for something like a room or area plan. You wouldn't necessarily show this on your standard ground floor plan, but it is something that is very useful and worth knowing about. So I thought I'd show you that. So now for the level 1 floor plan, I'm going to go ahead and create some more rooms, but I'm just going to place them in just the level 1 rooms. So I'm not going to place it on these ground floor rooms because they've already got those. So for the first one here, this is going to be the office. This here is bedroom 1, this is bedroom 2, and this is bedroom 3. This here is the hallway, and we can create another one for that. And then in here, you've got the main bathroom. You've got a toilet in there, and then this is the laundry. So I'm just going to go ahead and rename all of them. For these rooms that are rectangular, we can go ahead and change the room tag to room tag with dimensions. For the ones that aren't rectangular, I'm not going to bother. I'm going to leave it on the square meterage. This one here is pretty rectangular, so let's make that with dimensions. And the same as this one here. You can see that the laundry is actually just showing this here, but we also want it to include this little cupboard space as well. But because these walls are room bounding, they're not going to, allow that laundry to creep into there. So I'm going to uncheck the room bounding on those two walls under the properties panel. And now you can see that that laundry goes over that little cupboard space. I'm also going to make these, this wall here where the cupboards are not room bounding. So that goes all the way through there. And probably should do the same for this one as well. And then in that case, we're going to make this now a room tag with area just to make sure that it's not rectangular, that's not going to work. Then again, add some rooms to the upper level, and you can see that this isn't showing correctly. We're going to play around with that very shortly, but I'm just adding in the rooms for now. As you can see, placing a room here is going to place it for this entire upper level, but we really want to separate the kitchen from the dining area, from the lounge and living space. So what I'm going to do is use the room separator lines, and I'm going to do it from this grid line here and create a separation line there, and then another separation line probably from the end of that window because that's where the kitchen goes to. So now if I create a room, I can create a room here, which will be the kitchen, dining, and then living. And again, if we don't want these room separation lines to show up, we can go to the model categories under visibility and graphics settings by pressing VV. And we'll come down to lines, open that up with the X or the cross button there, go down to the room separation lines, and just uncheck the visibility option and apply that. So now we can't see them, which is good. Now it's just a matter of renaming these. There we go. All right, so that's all the room names done. Now I want to look at dimensioning in Revit. In the next lesson, we're going to be going over how to dimension in Revit and some of the best practices for doing so. If you'd like to get access to all of the course files, materials, and resources, as well as 20 hours of ad-free content, you can feel free to check out the full course on my website. I'll see you there.